been a hot minute since my last upload, but with the new set coming out, now is as good a time as ever to put together a deck tech to get back into the video production. And what better commander to look at than Skrelv, Defector Might, a mono-white commander from Phyrexia, or will be one, that is looking to do some really cool things with the new Toxic mechanic. Skrelv is a 1/1 for a single white that has Toxic 1, so when it deals combat damage to a player, they get a poison counter. Skrelv also can't block, another sign this commander is wanting us to be really aggressive and attack opponents. And lastly, for a white Phyrexian mana and tap, we can choose a colour and another creature we control to give that creature Toxic 1, hexproof from the chosen colour, and make it unblockable for creatures of that colour. That's a lot of positive text for a 1-mana commander, and here's a little secret. I love aggressive 1-mana commanders. They let you always have a turn 1 play, and if you go down the equipment route, it means you nearly always have something to play and put the equipment on. So that's what we're going to do today with Skrelv, an equipment Voltron build, but one where Skrelv plays a supporting role, protecting our chosen champion while helping get damage through. We're going to be building around the normal $80 budget for a casual to mid-power game. I'm also going to be choosing some thematic cards for the deck as well, and make use of all the new toys we've been given in this set. There's no way around it though, Skrelv is a poison commander, and historically, these haven't been much fun to play in Commander. Some players hate poison and will absolutely target you off the table, but in reality, it's actually quite hard to get 30 poison counters spread across all your opponents without taking a few turns to do it. So while we're going to build the deck to give our opponents these poison counters, we also just need to beat down our opponent's life totals with normal damage. With that, let's get into the deck and talk about the poison effects we have. Skrelv obviously can give any of our creatures Toxic 1, but the granddaddy of poison is of course Infect, which lets us deal lots of counters really quickly. So we've got a good mix of both the old and the new in this deck. For poison, we have Crawling Chorus, Jawbone Duelist, Lost Leonin, Necropede, Indoctrination Attendant, Priest of Norn, Time Strike, and Grafted Exoskeleton. These give a bunch of ways to increase poison counters over the course of the game, and the Infect and Toxic creatures can also stack with the Toxic 1 that Skrelv gives for extra counters. Currently, Skrelv is the only Might creature in the entire game though, but we have lots of ways to make Might tokens, and they all have Toxic 1, so we want them in this deck. To make all these Mights, we have Crawling Chorus again, Indoctrination Attendant, Might Overseer, Basilica Shepherd, Infested Fleshcutter, Skrelv's Hive, Charge of the Mights, Mirrex, and White Sun's Twilight. In particular, Skrelv's Hive is a crazy new token generator that's up there with something like Bitter Blossom in terms of usefulness. I also really like White Sun's Twilight, as if you can drop that late game, you can easily make a lethal amount of Mights that need an answer before they attack. But every poison deck needs one other mechanic to make it work: Proliferate. And for that, we have Grateful Apparition, Martyr for the Cause, Norn's Choirmaster, Throne of Geth, Contagion Clasp, Unbounded Potential, Wanderer's Strike, and Khan's Bastion. Proliferate really isn't White's thing, so we don't have a lot of ways to do this, but hopefully this will be enough to finish off players if they have a lot of poison counters in a really slow game. Now, Toxic requires our creatures to deal any amount of combat damage for just one counter, but we can easily double that counter by giving the creatures double strike. We have Fencing Ace, Jawbone Duelist, Twin Blade Geist, Duelist Heritage, True Conviction, and Fire Shrieker. Even outside of the Toxic ability, these can also give us extra triggers from our combat equipment, and just boost the damage of our creatures. Talking about equipment, let's look at how we can make our attacks even better. For that, we have Skull Clamp, Blackblade Reforged, Dowsing Dagger, Rogue's Gloves, Swiftfoot Boots, Sword of the Animist, Infested Fleshcutter, Fire Shrieker, Quietus Spike, Sword of Hearth and Home, and Grafted Exoskeleton. Since we have a 1-mana commander, I am absolutely making the space to put the trifecta of ramp equipment into this deck, with Dowsing Dagger, Sword of the Animist, and Sword of Hearth and Home. To help with drawing cards, we've got Rogue's Glove and Skull Clamp, along with the utter destruction that Quietus Spike and Blackblade Reforged can do. I built this deck around these powerful equipment as one of the few things that White is actually really good at tutoring for, and it can provide ramp, draw, and damage depending on the state of the game. And for those equipment tutors, we have Open the Armory, Relic Seeker, and Tarnar Swordsmith. The other tutors that we could use are a bit out of our price range for this deck, but really worth considering if you wanted to power up the deck a bit more. Normally I wouldn't run Relic Seeker, but since our commander can give a type of unblockable, it's actually really good here. These give us access to whatever our deck needs at any point in the game, though I would normally rate either Sword of Hearth and Home or Skull Clamp as the best two targets. Skull Clamp in particular is really great with our Might tokens, for example. Now, Commander has a Phyrexian mana ability, which is great since it only costs us 2 life, but it also requires untapping. So if we want to make use of it to do attacks and protect our creature, we need ways to untap our Commander. For that, we have Manifold Key, which can also make things unblockable, Paethia's Seal, which is also a mana rock, and Drumbellower, which will let us untap every turn. These let us hold up protection with our Commander while still tapping out to do attacks. An absolute win-win. Our Commander can't protect himself though, so we need a couple of ways to keep him alive while also potentially providing other utility. With Swiftfoot Boots, Sword of Hearth and Home, Bastion Protector, Blacksmith Skill, and Sidiri's Shelter. Before we move on to the staples, let's talk about a couple of the cards that didn't really fit into a category. These include Mirror Entity, which can act as an overrun effect if we get a bunch of creatures out all at once, and Denethor Capation Paragon, who makes our equipment cheaper and is just an overall good body to put them on. So, to our ramp package, and we have Sol Ring, Arcane Signet, Mind Stone, Dowsing Dagger, Sword of the Animist, Commander Sphere, Paethia's Seal, Sword of Hearth and Home, Solemn Simulacrum, and Myriad Landscape. This is a bit lower than our normal ramp packages, but with our equipment, we are looking to get multiple triggers off them rather than just ramping once. This is the power of ramp equipment. They stick around and keep getting value turn after turn as long as you can keep attacking. Moving on to draw, something that Mono White traditionally struggles with, we have Skull Clamp, Rogue's Gloves, Norn's Wellspring, Rumor Gatherer, Oblation, and Cut a Deal. Skull Clamp is the all-star here, and in a pinch, we can even use it on our Commander since they're only a 1/1. Otherwise, we have a bit of regular draw and scry with the new Norn's Wellspring, and Rumor Gatherer, and some burst draw with Cut a Deal. This should be enough to keep us in cards, and we have some ways to tutor up the 2 equipment to help with that. Our removal package is obviously very good, with Dispatch, Swords of Plowshares, Generous Gift, Oblation, Wanderer's Strike, and Demolition Field for target removal, and White Sun's Twilight, Austere Command, Hour of Revelation, and Ondu Inversion for our board wipes. White is the colour of removal, so we can just run the best effects of these for our budget. For Graveyard removal, we of course have the classic Soul Guide Lantern, which after seeing some much needed reprints, is back in the budget range again. Glad to see it since it's the best graveyard removal in the format. For our own Graveyard recursion, we have Buried Ruin, Remember the Fallen, and Sun Titan to help bring back our things. We aren't really running a graveyard deck here, but this gives us a couple of options for getting things back at a good rate. Moving to the land base, as a monocolor deck, we don't really have to worry about our utility lands all that much. For those, we have Access Tunnel, Buried Ruin, Cave of the Frost Dragon, Demolition Field, Khan's Bastion, Mirrex, Myriad Landscape, Opal Palace, Roadside Reliquary, Rogue's Passage, and the Fair Belisca. We have a couple of lands to help get our creatures through for damage, some draw lands if we need some cards later in the game, Opal Palace to help buff up our commander if we need to recast it a lot, and Cave of the Frost Dragon so that we can turn one of our lands into a creature if something needs to get through. Along with these, we have 24 basic planes, which is perfect for all the land grab we will be running. And that wraps up the deck. This kind of deck is never going to be high power. Voltron and aggro decks that don't rely on combos can only be so powerful in Commander. This deck provides poison tokens however, so assuming you can get a hit on each player, it's entirely possible to eliminate some opponents with direct damage and others with poison counters. The ability to stop blocks from creatures of a colour means it's really easy to get your hits in, however that drops off in effectiveness as the number of colours increases in their opponent's decks. Monocolor decks obviously have the most to fear, as they will require artifact creatures to block you, but a 4 or 5 color deck is probably going to have enough variety in their creatures to block you at any point. We can make those blocks painful, but if you really need to hit in for the win, it can be a little bit hard. We obviously have some lands and artifacts to help with getting through, but that requires hitting those. This sort of deck requires you to really play the table, as it's really easy to knock out one player, only to then be the archenemy against the other two and get stomped. Be the answer to other problem players, build up your resources, and try to establish a strong late game position. You want to get into a position where you can shot something like a Black Blade onto your commander and take out each opponent sequentially across 3 turns, but with the protection to help you stay alive through those turns. Thankfully, Skrelv is a really low cost commander, so even if they get removed a few times, the cost to recast won't break the bank. If you haven't tried out a 1 mana commander before, I would highly recommend Skrelv, for just the amount of value you're getting for that singular cost. It's hard to think of another commander that's this cheap with this many abilities. Before we wrap up though, let's quickly discuss some of the cards that didn't quite make the budget for this deck. Mondrak Glory Dominus is a great include for our deck, doubling all our token generation while also providing a great body. And also from this set, the new Glistening Sphere is a mana rock that also proliferates when it enters, an easy slam dunk for our deck. When it comes to the equipment, there are obviously a ton of expensive equipment you can get to upgrade this deck. Sword of Truth and Justice can give proliferate triggers. Sword of Fire and Ice can draw cards. The new Sword of Forge and Frontier gives both cards and ramp. Commander's Plate can help Skrelv swing in, and Shadow Spear is great for trample, lifelink, and removing other protection. On that topic, there are also a bunch of equipment synergy pieces that could go in, such as Steel Shaper's Gift and Stoneforge Mystic, as obvious Tutor includes, Sigarda's Aid, Halvar God of Battle, and Pure Steel Paladin to get more value from our equipment and to equip them a bit easier. Equipment Voltron has some pretty easy upgrade paths, so you can definitely power this up way more than this budget has room for. That's it for now though. I think Skrelv is going to be a pretty popular choice from this set, so be prepared to see him around a bit. It's been a quiet few months for the channel over this summer, but I'm hoping to get back into some videos again now that we're in the new year. We just passed the 3-year anniversary of the first video on this channel, and it's nice to see all the support you guys are giving. Until next time, thanks for watching.